Hi everyone. There is so much going on in the world of finance today, and so much more about to take place, that I thought it would be kind of fun to hold a commentary on the issues as they evolved during the course of 2011. I shall try to be as up-to-date as informative as possible, which shouldn't be too difficult because I have a long-standing affection for the market dating back to the early 1970s. I'm going to do this in a kind of podcast format, so these occasional bulletins will be concise and content efficient for those of you with limited bandwidth. Probably the most likely and high-profile event news of early 2011 will be the markets continuing to test the euro. You can expect this to happen sooner rather than later, and I doubt we will get very far into January before things start to get really interesting. A perfect storm is beginning to gather on the economic horizon. All the pieces are in place for a spectacular showdown. As the peripheral countries struggle with unprecedented cuts in public services and riots in the streets, the rating agencies are cutting their legs off from beneath them by marking down their creditworthiness, exacerbating the already excruciating costs of servicing all those borrowings. Eurobonds have been proposed as a mechanism for dealing with the peripheral funding crisis, but these are not the same as the Eurobonds that some of us are more familiar with. No, rather the proposal is for member countries to no longer issue their own nationally denominated debt instruments. This role will be taken over by a centralised European fiscal authority. The effect of this scheme, if introduced, will be to force Germany to pick up the tab for the peripheral members' higher borrowing costs. If you're a German politician trying to sell this idea to the German electorate, then I wish you the best of luck, and I expect you'll need it. Europe's politicians have thus far demonstrated a lamentable lack of understanding in dealing with the debt crisis, repeatedly holding urgent meetings with nothing ever to show for them by way of a solution is the worst possible way to handle a crisis. It reveals to the whole world that Europe's leaders have not the first idea how to get this crisis under control. So far they have done everything wrong. It would be impossible to make a worse job of it than they have already thus far made. You have to wonder who on earth is advising them, for they clearly have not the slightest idea of how foreign exchange markets work and what drives them. Adding to the difficulties from the other side of the fence are the strikers in peripheral countries such as Greece, who, if they continue to strike at the rate they have been, will make it impossible for their economies to recover, and the euro will be fatally damaged. It takes two to tango, and these governments can pile austerity upon austerity till the cows come home. They won't do the slightest bit of good if workers continue to disrupt the economy and impact upon growth to the extent that servicing the debt becomes impossible. My view overall for the euro is that it is only a matter of time before it comes all unravelled. It cannot survive in its present form, even if the German public could be persuaded into swallowing the Eurobond concept and shoulder the extra costs. You can come up with any scheme you like concerning harmonisation of fiscal policy across the bloc, but even something as sweeping as a common tax policy cannot rescue the situation. The plain fact is that as long as the euro remains in existence, the continent will be divided, with the peripheral countries mired in permanent depression, whilst countries such as Austria, Holland and Germany continue to improve, requiring higher interest rates to head off a surge in inflation, rate rises that the peripherals could never survive under. What Frau Merkel and Nicolas Sarkozy should really be working on, if they had an ounce of common sense between them, is an orderly exit plan for the weaker economies, so that when the inevitable happens, and the single currency breaks down completely, those people in the countries affected are not left starving in the streets without a safety net. The formulation of a Plan B to take effect when the euro falls is the single most important duty that Europe's leaders need to sit down and work out. The alternative of an unmanaged collapse simply doesn't bear thinking about. So, at the end of 2010, I suggest you go out and enjoy your party season while you can, then fasten your seatbelts for a highly eventful new year.